In this video, let's see another numerical problem based on both the concepts of inverse trigonometric functions and domain that we studied in the previous chapter of class 12th. We already know what do you mean by domain and what do you mean by range. Let me repeat for those who haven't studied the concept earlier. Domain is nothing but the values of x or the independent variable that you are taking into consideration so that the final value or the final answer that you obtain is always defined. That means, for example, I have a function, say y is equal to 1 upon x, and I am supposed to tell the domain of this function. So, the domain would be what all values of x you can put in this function so that my value in all, in turn, finally is always defined. That means the denominator can never be equal to 0, I know that. If I put the denominator equal to 0, my answer won't be defined. So, the domain of this function would be all real except 0. So, this is the basic concept of domain. Now, using this knowledge of domain and the knowledge of inverse trigonometric functions, let's go about solving this question. The question is, the domain of the function y is equal to sine inverse minus x square is what? There are 4 options given, we have to choose the correct one. Let's see what the solution has to say for this question. Having sine inverse in the question tells me I have to use the range of sine function. Sine inverse always has the values lying between minus 1 to 1. So, the angle or the theta here minus x square would always lie between the range prescribed for sine inverse, that is minus 1 to 1. So, I will be writing minus 1 to 1. Now, minus x square is the angle. It is always advisable to change the angle to the positive sign. So, let us multiply the whole inequality by a negative sign, and inequalities when multiplied by negative sign would change. That means less than will become greater than and greater than would become less than. So, the question changes as minus multiplied, so it becomes 1. The less than inequality would become greater than. Minus x square will change to plus x square. Again the inequality sign changes, and here 1 multiplied by minus 1 would be minus 1 only. So, I will write in the bracket what we did. We basically multiplied by negative sign or minus 1. The inequality has changed and the angle has now become x square. Now, x square, that means a square of any function is always a positive quantity. So, it cannot be bounded with minus 1. It can never be equal to minus 1. It has to be a non-negative quantity. So, the question now again changes and it becomes as in lying between 0 to 1. Why? Because anything which is a square can never be negative. So, the range is 0 to 1. But the question asked me the domain, and domain is always the value of a single independent variable, not the square. So, that means the answer would not be 0 to 1. So, it would not be the option number A which is written here. So, let us strike this off, and in any case equal to sign would come. So, it would again not be option number B wherein we have only small brackets, we would be wanting square brackets. Some answer or the other would be there, so it cannot be phi. So, here we know the answer is C, but still let us solve it and then match the answer and just not strike other options and take the other one which is left. X square, when x square changes to x for the functions which are related to inverse trigonometry and trigonometry, we cannot just write x. We have to write the modulus of x because we have to take into consideration the negative sign possibilities as well. So, it becomes mod of x. Now, everybody knows mod of x is a function whose domain, as we studied in the graph also, always lies between minus 1 to 1. So, hence my answer is minus 1 to 1 for mod x, but for x square if it was asked, we had to remain the answer here only, it would have been 0 to 1. So the answer for mod x or the domain part is minus 1 to 1 included, and hence we have to include the square brackets, which gives me option number C as my answer.